Welcome to Serenity Path, where wisdom, mindfulness, and growth come together. In this video, we'll dive deep into the powerful insights that can transform the way we view life's most challenging emotions, from regret and inner peace to vulnerability and generosity. These teachings, rooted in the timeless wisdom of Buddhism, offer a path to reclaim your peace, heal your past, and cultivate meaningful relationships. Are you ready to unlock the secrets of living a fulfilled, balanced life? Stay with us until the end, because this video is packed with life-changing wisdom that will help you navigate personal struggles, let go of past burdens, and embrace a new way of living. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's grow together on this journey. 1. Regrets, letting go of the past. Regrets are something that everyone experiences at some point in their life. We all have those moments we wish we could rewrite, the choices we made, the words we spoke, the opportunities we let slip by. But as much as we may yearn to turn back time, Buddhism teaches us that clinging to these past mistakes only traps us in suffering. Instead, true peace comes from understanding and releasing these regrets. By doing so, we open ourselves to the present moment and allow space for growth. The first step in letting go of regret is awareness, being aware of how much of your emotional energy is being consumed by the past. Regret, when carried around for too long, becomes a heavy burden that prevents you from experiencing life as it is, in its full richness and beauty. It's a bit like holding on to a stone that hurts your hand, but you don't realize how much pain it causes until you let it go. The Buddha encourages us to reflect on the past with mindfulness, recognizing the lessons it offers, and then releasing it. When we dwell on regrets, we often replay the same scenarios in our minds over and over. The more we focus on them, the more we reinforce negative emotions like guilt, anger, or sadness. It's easy to fall into this cycle, especially when we believe that by revisiting these memories, we can change the outcome. But the truth is, we cannot change the past, and the longer we hold on to these feelings, the more we block ourselves from moving forward. It's essential to remember that personal growth isn't about erasing mistakes or pretending they never happened. It's about learning from them. Every regret contains a lesson that can help you grow. For example, if you regret not standing up for yourself in a particular situation, that regret can serve as a reminder to advocate for your needs and values in the future. Rather than seeing regret as a sign of weakness, view it as an opportunity for self-improvement. Ask yourself, what can this moment teach me? How can I use this to become a better version of myself? The Buddha's teachings also remind us of the importance of forgiveness, not just of others, but of ourselves. We often find it easier to forgive others than we do to forgive ourselves, but self-forgiveness is a crucial part of letting go. By forgiving ourselves, we stop holding on to the past and create room for self-compassion. Compassion is essential for healing, and it starts with understanding that no one is perfect. We all make mistakes, and those mistakes don't define us unless we allow them to. One of the practices of mindfulness is to focus on the present moment, rather than being consumed by past regrets or future anxieties. The more you practice being present, the easier it becomes to release old hurts and let go of regret. Start by recognizing when you're thinking about something from the past, and gently bring your attention back to the here and now. Even simple practices, like taking a few deep breaths or focusing on a particular sensation, can help center you and pull you out of the cycle of regret. In our fast-paced world, it's easy to get caught up in the noise and forget to listen to ourselves. Regret often grows in silence and isolation, but when we take the time to pause and reflect, we can begin to unravel it. Through activities like meditation or journaling, we can safely process our emotions and gain insights into how we can release the weight of the past. Letting go in practice. In practical terms, letting go of regret requires intentional action. It's not enough to simply say, "I should move on." Instead, actively practice letting go by incorporating mindfulness into your daily life. For example, 1. Acknowledge the regret, Don't push it away or pretend it doesn't exist. Acknowledge it fully. Sit with it for a moment and feel its weight, but don't let it dominate you. 2. Reframe the situation. Ask yourself, what did I learn from this? How can I use this lesson to grow? By reframing the situation, you give it a new meaning that empowers you rather than keeps you stuck in the past. 3. Release the emotion. Through meditation, breathing exercises, or simple reflection, allow yourself to release the emotional grip that regret has on you. Visualize yourself letting go of the burden, like setting down a heavy object you no longer need. 4. Forgive yourself. Offer yourself kindness and understanding. Treat yourself with the same compassion you would offer a friend who is struggling. By integrating these practices into your daily life, you can create an inner peace that is not contingent on past events or mistakes. You'll begin to realize that true freedom lies in releasing the past and focusing on what you can control: your thoughts, your actions, and your future. Ultimately, letting go of regret is not just about forgetting the past, it's about reclaiming your power to live fully in the present moment. When you release the past, you stop allowing it to dictate your future. This is where mindfulness comes in, being aware of the present moment, accepting it fully, and realizing that each new moment is an opportunity to begin again. In the end, letting go of regret is an act of deep self-compassion. It's an acknowledgement that while the past is part of who we are, it does not need to control us. By finding peace within ourselves and accepting our imperfections, we can create a life filled with growth, learning, and tranquility. By embracing the wisdom of silence, you invite peace into your life, peace that arises not from avoiding the past, but from fully understanding it, learning from it, and then releasing it. Through this practice, you cultivate a deep sense of inner calm, allowing you to live with more clarity, understanding, and, most importantly, peace. 2. Inner peace. Protecting your peace. Inner peace is something we all long for, yet in today's chaotic world, it often feels just out of reach. External forces, whether it's the noise of social media, the constant pressure of work, or the endless demands of family and relationships, can easily disturb our inner calm. However, true peace doesn't come from external circumstances. It is a state of being that we must create and nurture from within. Buddhism teaches that real peace comes from detachment, not from material things, not from the opinions of others, and not from the constant distractions of the outside world. In order to protect your peace, you must first recognize that it is sacred. It is not something that can be found by acquiring more things, achieving more success, or gaining more validation. True peace resides within us, in the space between our thoughts, in the stillness of our minds. Yet, protecting that peace requires us to be intentional about what we allow into our mental, emotional, and physical space. The world we live in is loud. From the constant notifications on our phones to the never-ending demands of work and social interactions, it's no wonder that many of us feel constantly off balance. But the Buddha teaches us that we have the power to control what affects our inner peace. It's all about mindful awareness and choosing what we allow to enter our consciousness. Detachment is a crucial concept in Buddhist teachings. But it's important to understand that detachment doesn't mean disengagement from life. It doesn't mean becoming indifferent or cold. Rather, detachment is the ability to experience life fully without becoming overly attached to any particular outcome, opinion, or expectation. When you are detached, you are not controlled by the thoughts or emotions that arise within you. You observe them without being swept away by them. For example, imagine you've spent weeks working on a project and invested a lot of energy into it. When the project is completed, you present it to others, but instead of receiving the recognition you hoped for, you face criticism. Without detachment, this criticism could deeply disturb your peace. You might become angry or discouraged, allowing that external judgment to define how you feel. However, if you practice detachment, you can step back and recognize that the criticism is not a reflection of your worth. It's just one person's perspective at a particular moment in time. By detaching yourself from the need for external approval, you protect your peace from being shattered by the opinions of others. You maintain your equilibrium and stay rooted in your own self-worth. In many ways, protecting your peace is like guarding a sacred space. Imagine that your mind is like a beautiful garden. You are the gardener, and your thoughts are the plants that grow there. If you allow toxic thoughts, negativity, or stress to take root, they will take over your garden, choking out the beauty and serenity that could otherwise thrive. On the other hand, if you cultivate positive, peaceful thoughts, your mind becomes a haven of tranquility. This process of guarding your peace requires vigilance and awareness. It means being mindful of how you react to external situations and choosing to respond from a place of calm rather than reacting impulsively. It also means being mindful of who you allow into your life. Not everyone who enters your space has your best interests at heart, and some people might disturb your peace without even realizing it. For example, there may be people in your life who are always complaining, gossiping, or spreading negativity. While it's natural to empathize with their struggles, constantly absorbing their negativity can cause your inner peace to waver. To protect your peace, you must recognize when these external influences are affecting you and set boundaries. It's okay to distance yourself from negative situations or people who drain your energy. By doing this, you safeguard your inner calm, allowing yourself to grow stronger and more centered. Mindfulness is key to protecting your inner peace. It's about being present in each moment, without judgment, without distraction. When we practice mindfulness, we create a space between stimulus and reaction. This space allows us to choose how we want to respond rather than reacting automatically based on old habits or emotional triggers. Let's say you're driving and someone cuts you off in traffic. Without mindfulness, you might immediately become angry, maybe even honk your horn or shout at the other driver. But with mindfulness, you notice the anger as it arises. You recognize it, but instead of letting it control you, you choose to breathe deeply and release the anger. You recognize that your peace is more important than the fleeting irritation caused by someone else's actions. This doesn't mean that negative emotions won't arise, they will. But with mindfulness, you learn not to attach to them. You can experience the emotion without allowing it to define you or dictate your actions. Mindful awareness allows you to live more fully in the present, without constantly being pulled into emotional reactions that disrupt your peace. One of the most powerful ways to protect your peace is through silence. In the Buddhist tradition, silence is seen not just as the absence of sound, but as a space of inner clarity and stillness. In a world that is constantly shouting for your attention, silence becomes a refuge, a place where you can reconnect with your true self and regain your balance. The power of silence lies in its ability to help you reconnect with your own thoughts and feelings, without the interference of external noise. It gives you a moment to breathe, to reflect, and to recenter yourself. This is why practices like meditation and quiet reflection are so essential for protecting your inner peace. When you give yourself permission to pause, to be still, and to be in silence, you allow your mind to return to its natural state of peace. In silence, you can also gain clarity on your feelings and thoughts. Often, the noise around us distracts us from what is truly important. But in silence, we can tune into our inner wisdom, hear our intuition more clearly, and understand what truly brings us peace. In my own life, I have experienced moments when the world felt overwhelming, and my peace seemed fragile. There was a time when I was constantly checking my phone, responding to every message, and staying connected to the opinions of others. But I found that the more I engaged with the outside world, the more restless my mind became. It was only when I intentionally created time for silence, by setting boundaries around my phone use, spending time in nature, and practicing mindfulness, that I started to feel a shift. The more I protected my peace, the more I realized that it wasn't something I had to chase or seek externally. It was already within me, and I just needed to create the space to allow it to emerge. By choosing to step away from the chaos, even for brief moments, I found that my reactions to stressors were less intense. I could observe situations more clearly and respond with compassion instead of reactivity. Protecting your peace doesn't require radical changes to your lifestyle, it can be integrated into everyday activities. Here are some simple practices to help cultivate peace. 1. Set boundaries. Recognize when external forces are draining your energy, whether it's negativity from others, constant notifications, or stress. Don't be afraid to set limits and protect your space. 2. Practice mindful breathing. Whenever you feel overwhelmed, pause for a few moments and focus on your breath. Inhale deeply, hold for a moment, and exhale slowly. This simple act can bring you back to the present and calm your mind. 3. Limit external stimuli. Create moments of silence in your day, even if it's just for a few minutes. Turn off your phone, sit in a quiet room, and let your mind rest. 4. Engage in meaningful activities. Focus on activities that nourish your soul, whether it's reading, walking in nature, or practicing meditation. These activities help reconnect you with your inner peace. By making these practices part of your daily life, you'll not only protect your peace, but you'll also create a more centered, mindful, and compassionate approach to the world around you. In the end, protecting your inner peace is about prioritizing your well-being and choosing to live in alignment with your values. It requires consistent effort and mindfulness, but with each day that you cultivate peace, you'll find yourself more resilient and balanced, regardless of the chaos around you. Inner peace is not just a destination, it's a continuous journey of self-awareness, growth, and love. 3. Material successes. Avoiding attachment to wealth. In a world that often measures success by what we own, how much we earn, and the lifestyle we lead, it can be easy to fall into the trap of believing that material wealth equals happiness. We live in a society where new cars, bigger homes, and exotic vacations are regularly flaunted on social media, and the constant bombardment of such images can create an underlying pressure to measure up. But Buddhism teaches us that attachment to material wealth is a cause of suffering, not a path to true fulfillment. At its core, the Buddha's teachings emphasize the impermanence of all things. Wealth, possessions, and status are all transient. No matter how hard we work or how much we accumulate, we can never truly own anything permanently. Our possessions, whether it's our house, our car, or the money in our bank account, are subject to the laws of impermanence. What we cling to, what we hold dear, can disappear in an instant. Attachment to material success is where suffering begins. This attachment leads to a constant cycle of desire, the desire to have more, to be seen as more successful, to accumulate more for the sake of security or status. The problem arises when we tie our sense of worth and happiness to these material things. The more we cling to them, the more we become dependent on them for our self-esteem and sense of purpose. Understanding the true nature of success. The Buddha's wisdom invites us to reframe our definition of success. Rather than measuring success by what we have or how much we acquire, we are encouraged to measure success by how we live and how we contribute to the world around us. True success, according to Buddhist teachings, is not about possessions, but about living a life of purpose, kindness, and mindfulness. Consider the story of a young professional who works tirelessly to climb the corporate ladder. They acquire a beautiful home, drive a luxury car, and take expensive vacations. From the outside, their life appears to be the epitome of success. Yet, despite all their material gains, they feel unfulfilled. The constant pursuit of wealth leaves them exhausted, disconnected from their relationships, and searching for meaning. On the other hand, a friend of theirs, who has little material wealth, spends their time volunteering, helping others, and nurturing deep, meaningful relationships. Though their possessions are few, they exude a sense of contentment and inner peace. This contrast illustrates the emptiness of material wealth. No amount of external achievement can fill the internal void if we are disconnected from what truly matters, our relationships, our purpose, and our well-being. The Buddha teaches us that contentment arises from within, not from the things we accumulate. True success is about aligning our actions with our values and cultivating qualities such as generosity, mindfulness, and compassion. The danger of attachment. The attachment to wealth can take many forms, from the relentless pursuit of status to the fear of losing what we have. In Buddhism, attachment is considered one of the primary causes of suffering. When we become too attached to material possessions or wealth, we begin to see them as a source of security and happiness. This attachment leads to a fear of loss, fear that we might lose our wealth, our success, or our possessions. This fear becomes a barrier to experiencing true peace. Take, for example, the common desire to keep up with others. When we compare ourselves to people who have more material wealth, we can feel inadequate or inferior. This comparison often leads to a cycle of desire. We want what others have, or we want to appear more successful than we actually are. But this cycle never ends. There's always something more to acquire, always someone else to compare ourselves to. I've had moments in my life when I felt the pressure to accumulate more, whether it was a bigger house, a nicer car, or more social recognition. There was a time when I thought these things would make me happy, or at least make me feel validated. But as I began to practice mindfulness and reflect on the Buddha's teachings, I realized that this attachment was a source of stress, not peace. The more I sought external validation through material success, the emptier I felt inside. It wasn't until I started focusing on what truly brought me joy, like spending time with loved ones, practicing kindness, and pursuing personal growth, that I began to experience real contentment. The teachings of Buddhism suggest that we free ourselves from attachment by recognizing that material possessions are impermanent and by developing a more flexible relationship with them. This doesn't mean renouncing all possessions or wealth, it means not allowing them to define us or control our happiness. One powerful way to detach from material wealth is through the practice of generosity. In Buddhism, generosity, known as dana, is one of the most cherished virtues. It's not about giving away everything you own, but rather, about cultivating an attitude of generosity in all areas of life. Generosity helps break the cycle of attachment by shifting our focus away from accumulating more to giving more. There's a beautiful story of a monk who lived in a modest hut in the mountains. One day, a wealthy man came to visit the monk, bringing him a large sum of money and valuable gifts. The monk accepted the gifts with grace, but instead of keeping them for himself, he used the money to help the poor and the needy in his village. The wealthy man was surprised by the monk's generosity and asked, "Why do you give so much away? You could keep it for yourself." The monk replied, "What is wealth, if not something that brings joy to others? I have enough to live, and I believe that sharing is what brings true happiness, not the accumulation of wealth." This story beautifully illustrates the Buddhist perspective on wealth and generosity. True wealth is not in the things we own, but in the joy we create by sharing what we have with others. By practicing generosity, we reduce our attachment to material possessions and invite more contentment and fulfillment into our lives. Ultimately, true fulfillment does not come from acquiring more material wealth, but from creating a life aligned with our deeper values. The Buddha teaches that happiness is found not in possessions, but in the way we choose to live. When we stop chasing material success and focus on the things that truly matter, our relationships, our health, our inner peace, we begin to experience a sense of fulfillment that no amount of wealth can provide. In my own journey, I've come to understand that true wealth is the richness of our experiences and the connections we build with others. I've learned that success is not about how much we have, but about how much we give, how present we are in the lives of others, and how deeply we understand ourselves. This realization has helped me shift my focus from accumulating wealth to cultivating a life that reflects my values, values such as mindfulness, kindness, and compassion. I no longer see material possessions as the ultimate goal, but as tools that can support my greater purpose in life. In the end, the Buddha's teachings on material wealth encourage us to live without attachment. While it's natural to appreciate the comforts and opportunities that wealth can provide, true happiness comes from understanding that we don't need to own everything to be fulfilled. By practicing detachment, generosity, and mindfulness, we can find peace and contentment in the present moment, regardless of what we own or how much we accumulate. True success lies in living a life that reflects our values, in helping others, and in nurturing our own well-being. It is a life free from the fear of loss and the endless pursuit of more. It is a life rooted in peace, generosity, and gratitude. By letting go of attachment to wealth, we open ourselves to a deeper sense of fulfillment, one that no material possession can ever provide. 4. Negative thoughts, cultivating positivity. Negative thoughts are an inevitable part of life. We all experience them, the self-doubt that creeps in when we face challenges, the anxiety that arises when things aren't going according to plan, the inner critic that tells us we're not good enough. These thoughts are natural, but when left unchecked, they can spiral, affecting our mood, our relationships, and even our physical health. In Buddhist teachings, the mind is compared to a garden. If we allow negative thoughts to take root, they can quickly overtake the garden, leaving little space for peace, joy, or clarity. But just as a gardener tends to a garden by pulling out weeds and cultivating healthy plants, we too can tend to our minds by practicing mindfulness and cultivating positive, nourishing thoughts. At the core of the Buddha's teachings on the mind is the understanding that thoughts are not permanent. They arise, they pass away, and they do not define who we are. In Buddhism, there is a profound awareness that we are not our thoughts. We are the observer of our thoughts, and with this awareness comes the power to change our relationship with them. Instead of letting negative thoughts control us, we can choose to observe them with mindfulness, allowing them to pass by without attachment. This is the first step in transforming negativity into positivity, understanding that thoughts, whether positive or negative, are just mental phenomena. They come and go, but they do not define us. The inner critic is one of the most powerful forces that can hold us back in life. It tells us we're not good enough, that we'll never succeed, that we don't deserve happiness. Often, these messages are so deeply ingrained that we believe them without question. We may have internalized these beliefs from past experiences, from societal pressures, or from people in our lives who projected their own insecurities onto us. But the Buddha teaches us to see our inner critic for what it truly is, a mind construct, born from fear and uncertainty. Imagine a person who has always wanted to pursue a creative endeavor, like painting or writing, but has been held back by the fear of failure. Every time they sit down to start, the inner critic begins, "You're not talented enough, people will laugh at you, you'll never be as good as others." Over time, these thoughts stop them from even picking up a paintbrush or writing a word. The inner critic has become their constant companion, shaping their actions, or lack of actions. However, if this person were to adopt a mindful approach to these thoughts, they could begin to observe the inner critic without reacting to it. Instead of believing the voice that says, "You're not good enough," they might recognize it as a fear-based thought. By acknowledging it without judgment, they create space between themselves and the thought. This distance allows them to make a conscious choice. They can choose to ignore the critic and take a step toward their creative passion anyway, or simply observe the thought and let it pass without attaching any significance to it. The Buddha's teachings on mindfulness suggest that we do not need to engage with every thought that arises. We can observe them, recognize them for what they are, and then choose to let them go. By doing this, we begin to loosen the grip of the inner critic, allowing us to move through life with greater ease and confidence. Mindfulness is one of the most effective tools in overcoming negative thinking. Through mindfulness, we develop an awareness of our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in the present moment, without judgment. When we notice negative thoughts arising, whether they are about ourselves, others, or the world around us, we don't need to act on them or believe them. We simply observe them and let them pass. This is not about suppressing negative thoughts or pretending they don't exist. It's about creating a space of awareness where we can see them clearly, without being carried away by them. There was a time when I would often think, "I'm not good enough to succeed," whenever I faced a difficult challenge. These thoughts would paralyze me, making me hesitant to take action. But when I started practicing mindfulness, I learned to observe these thoughts without identifying with them. One day, I noticed the familiar negative thought rising in my mind, "I'm not good enough." Instead of getting caught up in it, I simply paused and said to myself, "That's an interesting thought, but it doesn't define me." By doing this, I was able to shift my attention away from the thought and refocus on what needed to be done. This shift, this space between stimulus and response, is what mindfulness offers us. It allows us to create a new relationship with our thoughts. Instead of automatically reacting to negative thoughts, we learn to respond with clarity and intention. One of the most powerful antidotes to negative thinking is self-compassion. Buddhism teaches that we must treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a close friend. Often, we are our own harshest critics, and the inner voice that judges us so critically can become overwhelming. But when we practice self-compassion, we soften that voice. We acknowledge our mistakes and imperfections, not with harshness or shame, but with kindness and acceptance. Think about a time when you made a mistake, perhaps at work, in a relationship, or in a personal goal. Your inner critic might have started saying, "You should have known better," or "You're so stupid." But what if, instead of judging yourself, you responded with compassion? What if you said, "It's okay to make mistakes. I'm human, and I'm learning." This small shift in attitude can make a world of difference. Rather than ruminating on the mistake and getting stuck in negativity, you open the door to growth and healing. Through self-compassion, we learn to forgive ourselves, to recognize that we are not defined by our mistakes, but by how we choose to learn from them and move forward. This shift from self-criticism to self-compassion is one of the most liberating practices we can adopt to transform our inner world. Just as negative thoughts can take root in our minds, so too can positive thoughts. The Buddha encourages us to cultivate thoughts that promote peace, joy, and well-being. By consciously choosing to focus on positive thoughts, we begin to shift our mental landscape. This is not about ignoring challenges or pretending everything is always perfect. It's about reframing our perspective and focusing on the opportunities for growth, love, and connection that exist in every moment. I've found that one of the simplest ways to cultivate positive thoughts is through gratitude. Every day, I take a moment to reflect on the things I'm grateful for, no matter how small. Whether it's the warmth of the sun on my skin, the support of a loved one, or the chance to try something new, these moments of gratitude help me shift my focus away from negativity and toward the blessings in my life. Over time, this practice has helped me build a more positive mindset, one that allows me to see life through a lens of appreciation rather than lack. Another powerful practice is affirmations, positive statements that we repeat to ourselves to reinforce a positive mindset. For example, instead of thinking, "I'm not good enough," try repeating, "I am worthy, I am capable, I am enough." Over time, these affirmations can help rewire your brain to focus on your strengths and potential, rather than your perceived flaws. In the end, cultivating positivity is not about denying the existence of negative thoughts. It's about recognizing them for what they are, temporary mental events that do not define us, and choosing to respond to them with mindfulness, compassion, and clarity. By practicing mindfulness, cultivating positive thoughts, and responding to ourselves with compassion, we can transform our mental landscape from one of negativity to one of growth, possibility, and peace. The Buddha's teachings remind us that we are not our thoughts, we are the observer of our thoughts. By becoming more mindful and compassionate, we can learn to cultivate thoughts that serve our highest good and align with the life we want to live. In doing so, we create a space for peace, joy, and inner harmony to thrive. 5. Personal struggles, mindful sharing in relationships. In our daily lives, personal struggles are inevitable. Whether it's a disagreement with a loved one, a challenging period at work, or dealing with our own emotional turmoil, we all face moments that test our resilience. During these times, it's natural to seek support from those around us. We might want to share our frustrations, our pain, or our confusion in hopes of receiving validation or advice. However, the Buddha's teachings on mindfulness offer us a valuable insight. Not all struggles need to be shared, and the way we share our struggles can make a significant difference in our relationships and our emotional well-being. At the heart of mindful sharing is the recognition that how we communicate our difficulties can either create connection or strain relationships. Buddhism teaches us that words have immense power. They can either heal or harm, uplift or undermine, depending on how we choose to use them. In the context of personal struggles, it's important to consider intentionality in sharing. Are we sharing to seek genuine support and understanding, or are we sharing out of a need to vent or to make ourselves feel better at someone else's expense? Mindful sharing is the practice of communicating our struggles in a way that is intentional, compassionate, and aware. It's about being conscious of the impact of our words, not just on ourselves but on the people we are sharing with. We live in a culture where people often overshare, especially on social media. We might post every little detail of our lives, from minor inconveniences to deep personal struggles. But this constant sharing can dilute the value of our words and make us feel emotionally drained. Mindful sharing, on the other hand, invites us to pause and reflect before speaking. The Buddha's teachings on right speech encourage us to speak only when our words are true, necessary, and kind. In moments of struggle, this means asking ourselves, is this something that will benefit the person I'm sharing with? Am I seeking understanding or simply venting? The intention behind our words shapes their impact. If we speak from a place of mindfulness, we can offer our struggles in a way that invites compassion, rather than creating unnecessary conflict or burdening others. One of the most challenging aspects of mindful sharing is knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. There are times when sharing our struggles with a trusted friend or family member is essential for healing. However, there are also times when sharing too much can create tension or strain in our relationships. Oversharing, especially in the heat of the moment, can often lead to misunderstandings or unintended harm. Sometimes, silence is the wisest response. I recall a situation where I was facing a difficult time at work. I was feeling frustrated and overwhelmed, and I turned to a close friend to share my feelings. At first, I simply vented, listing everything that was wrong. But as I spoke, I realized that my friend seemed uncomfortable. It wasn't that they didn't care, it was that my words were coming out of a place of anger and frustration, and they didn't offer the space for constructive dialogue. My friend, sensing my emotional intensity, quietly suggested, maybe we could talk about this later when you feel calmer. At that moment, I understood that sharing my struggle in such a raw and unprocessed state was not helpful for either of us. This experience reminded me of the importance of timing and awareness when it comes to sharing. The Buddha's teachings suggest that, before speaking, we should ask ourselves whether our words will contribute to peace and understanding or whether they will only escalate the conflict. There are moments when it's better to pause and reflect before opening up. Mindful silence can offer the time needed to process emotions and come to a place of clarity, making it easier to communicate our struggles in a way that fosters connection, rather than division. Another aspect of mindful sharing is discernment, knowing who to share our struggles with. Not everyone is equipped to hold space for our pain. While it may be tempting to share every detail with anyone who will listen, it's important to recognize that not everyone can offer the support we need. In Buddhism, there is a deep respect for the value of right association, the practice of surrounding ourselves with people who support our growth and well-being. The Buddha taught that we should be mindful of the company we keep, as those we share our time and energy with can either uplift or drain us. There was a time when I was dealing with a personal challenge, and I instinctively turned to a friend who, while well-meaning, often became overwhelmed by my struggles. After each conversation, I noticed I felt emotionally drained, rather than supported. It wasn't that this friend didn't care, they did, but they didn't have the capacity to listen without getting emotionally caught up in the situation. Eventually, I realized that sharing my struggles with this person wasn't helpful for either of us. So, I chose to confide in someone else, someone who had the emotional maturity and capacity to listen without judgment. This experience taught me the importance of choosing wisely when it comes to sharing. We all need a support system of people who are able to hold our pain with compassion and without judgment. These are the people who can offer wisdom, empathy, and a safe space for healing. When we choose to share with those who can offer this kind of support, our struggles are less likely to cause division and more likely to lead to mutual growth. Mindful sharing is not just about choosing the right time and right person, it's also about choosing the right tone and intention behind our words. We can share our struggles in a way that is compassionate, rather than reactive. When we share with compassion, we are more likely to be received with understanding and love. When we share from a place of understanding, we create an environment where others feel safe to express their own struggles, leading to deeper connection and empathy. In my own experience, I've found that when I approach my struggles with a mindset of compassion, both for myself and for the other person, the conversation feels lighter and more productive. Rather than venting or seeking validation, I focus on expressing my feelings and seeking understanding. I've also learned that offering my struggles with gratitude, rather than frustration, creates a space where I feel heard and supported. For instance, instead of saying, "I'm so overwhelmed and frustrated with this situation," I might say, "I've been going through a challenging time, and I'm struggling with how to handle it. I could really use your advice or just someone to listen." This subtle shift in wording invites a more compassionate response, and it acknowledges that the other person's time and energy are valuable. It fosters an environment of mutual respect and care, where both parties can share openly without feeling burdened or overwhelmed. Buddhism teaches us that silence can be as powerful as speech. In moments of deep struggle, sometimes the most compassionate thing we can do is remain silent and offer presence rather than words. In relationships, there are times when our loved ones don't need advice or solutions, they need our presence and empathy. Just being there for someone, holding space for their feelings, can be incredibly healing. I once had a friend who was going through a difficult time after losing a loved one. No word seemed right, and I found myself unsure of what to say. Instead of offering platitudes or trying to fix the situation, I simply sat with my friend, letting them express their pain without interruption. In the silence of that moment, my friend found the comfort they needed. They didn't need me to provide answers, they just needed someone who was willing to sit with them in their grief. This experience reminded me that silence is a gift. Sometimes, our presence and willingness to listen are all that's needed to create healing. By practicing mindful silence, we can create a space where others feel heard, understood, and supported, without the need for constant words. In the end, mindful sharing in relationships is about creating balance, knowing when to speak and when to remain silent, choosing the right person to confide in, and communicating our struggles with intention and compassion. It's about being aware of the impact our words have on others and ensuring that we are not just venting our frustrations, but sharing in a way that fosters understanding, healing, and connection. Through mindful sharing, we not only honor our own struggles but also cultivate deeper, more meaningful relationships. We learn that sharing is not just about unloading our emotions, but about opening our hearts to others in a way that brings us closer together. By practicing this form of mindful communication, we can transform our personal struggles into opportunities for growth, connection, and mutual support. 6. Plans and goals, working in silence. In a world where everyone seems to be constantly sharing their dreams and ambitions, it can feel almost natural to broadcast our plans for the future. Whether it's telling friends, family, or social media followers about the exciting goals we've set, there's often an internal desire to receive validation and support for our aspirations. Yet, the Buddha's teachings offer a profound and often counterintuitive insight. Sometimes, silence is the most powerful way to approach our plans and goals. In the realm of mindfulness, the idea of working in silence is not about keeping secrets or hiding our intentions from others. Rather, it's about avoiding unnecessary distractions that come from constant external validation and opinions. It's about fostering a sense of focus and discipline, where our energy is not diluted by the opinions or expectations of others, but instead channeled into the quiet, steady work of realizing our vision. The Buddha often spoke about the importance of detachment, not from life itself, but from the attachment to outcomes. When it comes to our goals, the same principle applies. Attachment to the future, the desire to control every aspect of how things will unfold, can create unnecessary anxiety and suffering. The more we attach ourselves to the approval of others or seek validation for our goals, the more we risk losing focus on the work itself. Imagine you've decided to start a business. You've researched, you've planned, and you have a clear vision of what you want to achieve. The natural urge may be to share this excitement with everyone around you, seeking their approval and asking for their feedback. But, as you continue to share your ideas with others, you may begin to notice that their responses, whether positive or negative, start to impact how you feel about your business. Some people might express doubts, others may suggest changes you hadn't considered, and before long, you find yourself questioning the very plans you were so certain about. By working in silence, you can avoid the subtle shift that happens when external voices influence your inner confidence. Instead of constantly seeking feedback, you give yourself the space to build your plans without the pressure of others' expectations. This doesn't mean you don't value advice or that you don't seek guidance. It simply means that your confidence and commitment to your goals are not swayed by the opinions of others. Working quietly allows you to maintain your focus and build momentum, step by step, without the noise of outside voices. Sharing our plans too openly can often lead to distraction. While it might seem like sharing your goals is a way to gain motivation and accountability, it can also open the door to external pressure. The more you talk about your plans, the more you invite others' thoughts, expectations, and judgments. This can pull your attention away from the actual work and onto the need for validation, praise, or approval. In Buddhist teachings, there is an understanding that our energy is precious. When we focus our attention on too many things, whether it's listening to others' opinions, thinking about how we will be perceived, or constantly talking about our goals, we scatter our energy, making it harder to concentrate on the task at hand. Focused energy, cultivated through silence, allows us to put our full attention on the present moment and the work we are doing, rather than getting distracted by external validation or doubt. I've experienced this firsthand. There was a time when I had a vision for a new project, and I was excited to share it with others. At first, the feedback was encouraging, but over time, I began to feel the weight of others' opinions. Some of the advice was helpful, but much of it was contradictory or focused on how the project might be perceived by others. As a result, I found myself overwhelmed with options and uncertain of how to proceed. It wasn't until I decided to step back and focus on the work itself, without constantly sharing or seeking validation, that I found the clarity I needed to move forward. The decision to work in silence doesn't mean hiding your plans from others forever, but rather giving yourself permission to focus on quiet, steady progress. The benefits of this approach are profound. 1. Clarity of vision. When you work in silence, you are not distracted by others' ideas or opinions. This allows you to clarify your own vision and ensure that your actions align with your true intentions. You develop a deeper understanding of what you really want and how to achieve it. 2. Reduced anxiety. The more you share your goals with others, the more you invite anxiety about their perceptions and expectations. By choosing silence, you avoid these anxieties and instead focus solely on the action required to reach your goal. This can lead to a greater sense of peace, as you become less concerned with how others see you and more focused on your own progress. 3. Increased productivity. The more you talk about your goals, the less energy you have for doing the work. Silence fosters discipline. By not constantly discussing your plans with others, you conserve your mental energy for the task at hand. With this energy directed toward action, you become more productive, more focused, and more likely to make steady progress toward your goals. 4. Authentic success. Success that is built without the need for constant external validation is often more authentic and sustainable. By working in silence, you are not measuring your progress by the reactions of others, but by your own sense of accomplishment. This leads to a deeper, more lasting form of fulfillment. In Buddhism, detachment does not mean indifference or apathy, it means being free from the desire for a specific outcome. When working toward a goal, attachment to the outcome can create suffering because we become emotionally invested in how things turn out, rather than in the process itself. The Buddha's teachings remind us that while it's natural to want success, it's equally important to remain unattached to the results. Imagine you are training for a marathon. You've set a goal to run it in a certain time, but as you continue with your training, you notice that your focus is shifting. You become more focused on how well you perform and less on enjoying the process of running itself. As race day approaches, you feel more anxiety about the outcome, which begins to detract from the joy you once found in running. By practicing detachment, you can refocus on the present moment, on each step of the training process, each breath you take, and each stride you make. The joy of running becomes less about the final time you achieve and more about the satisfaction of working toward your goal with intention and dedication. This shift allows you to stay grounded and focused on the journey, not just the destination. Buddhism teaches that actions speak louder than words. When we work in silence, we allow our actions and results to speak for themselves. There is a profound power in letting your work speak for itself, rather than seeking constant validation or approval. When you focus on the process, consistently putting in the effort, and staying true to your vision, the outcome naturally follows. In my own journey, I've found that when I stop talking about what I plan to do and simply start doing it, the results often surprise me. There's a unique satisfaction in knowing that you are fully immersed in the process, not concerned with how others will perceive you or your progress. It's about trusting that the work itself will create the results you desire, without needing to announce each step along the way. In the end, working in silence isn't about hiding your dreams or keeping your goals a secret. It's about creating a space where you can focus, stay disciplined, and build your vision without external distractions. It's about finding the courage to trust in the process rather than seeking validation from others. When we practice detachment, we free ourselves from the anxiety and pressure of expectations, allowing us to work with a sense of peace and clarity. By embracing the Buddha's teachings on silence, we cultivate a deep sense of inner confidence in our ability to succeed. We learn that the quiet work we do, the steps we take, and the dedication we put in are the true measures of success. Let your actions speak louder than your words, and let the results of your silent efforts reflect the depth of your commitment. Working in silence, with mindfulness and detachment, allows you to stay true to your vision and move forward with confidence, creating a path of success that is rooted in inner peace and authentic achievement. 7. Vulnerabilities. Trust wisely. Vulnerability is often seen as a weakness in many cultures, yet in the wisdom of Buddhism, vulnerability is recognized as a powerful tool for healing, connection, and growth. However, vulnerability must be approached with mindfulness and discernment, for not everyone is capable of handling our vulnerabilities with the care they deserve. Trusting others with our deepest struggles, fears, and insecurities is a delicate act, and sharing these parts of ourselves requires careful consideration. Trust wisely, for once shared, our vulnerabilities can be either nurtured or exploited, depending on the intentions of those we choose to confide in. In Buddhism, discernment, the ability to see clearly and make wise decisions, is a vital practice. While it is important to allow ourselves to be open, it is equally important to be selective about where we place our trust. The Buddha teaches that wisdom and compassion go hand in hand. We are invited to open our hearts, but also to maintain awareness of who is truly capable of receiving our vulnerability without judgment or harm. One of the most important aspects of sharing our vulnerabilities is discernment, the ability to choose who we open up to. Vulnerability should not be given to just anyone, because not all people have the emotional maturity or capacity to handle our deepest feelings. When we share our vulnerabilities, we are offering a part of our soul, a piece of our emotional landscape. Some people may be unable to hold this space for us, and in such cases, sharing our struggles with them may result in more harm than good. Consider a person who is dealing with a personal loss, perhaps the death of a loved one. In their grief, they seek solace by sharing their pain with a close friend. However, this friend, while well-meaning, may respond with impatience or discomfort, offering platitudes like, "It's time to move on," or "You should be over this by now." While this person may not have intended to cause harm, the response can deepen the sense of isolation and emotional hurt. In contrast, a different friend, who is more emotionally attuned, might simply listen without judgment, offering empathy and space for healing. In this scenario, the difference lies not in the vulnerability itself but in the capacity of the person receiving it. The key lesson is clear: we must choose carefully who we trust with our deepest vulnerabilities. Not everyone is capable of responding with the compassion and understanding we need. Before we can trust others, it's essential to trust ourselves. Often, we place so much of our trust in others that we forget to honor our own inner wisdom. Self-trust is the foundation of all relationships, for when we trust ourselves, we become less dependent on external validation and more confident in our ability to navigate the challenges life throws at us. There was a time in my life when I found myself constantly seeking validation and emotional support from others, often at the expense of my own well-being. I shared my struggles with anyone who would listen, hoping to find someone who could offer solutions or comfort. However, over time, I realized that while sharing is important, true healing comes from within. It was only when I began to trust my own judgment and intuition that I found the strength to navigate my struggles without relying on others to fix me. I learned that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but a path to self-awareness and self-compassion. By trusting yourself, you can make more conscious decisions about who you share your vulnerabilities with. You will no longer feel compelled to open up to others for the sake of approval or reassurance. Instead, you will share your vulnerability when it feels right, with people who have shown themselves to be trustworthy and capable of holding space for your pain. When shared wisely, vulnerability becomes a bridge that connects us more deeply with others. It allows us to break through the barriers of isolation and perfectionism and show our true selves. The Buddha teaches that authentic connection is built on compassion and honesty, not on the facades we put up to protect ourselves from judgment. A couple who had been facing ongoing tension in their relationship finally opened up to one another about their fears, frustrations, and insecurities. For years, they had kept their vulnerabilities hidden, afraid that exposing them would weaken the relationship. But when they chose to share their deepest struggles, without judgment or shame, their connection deepened in ways they had never imagined. Their willingness to be vulnerable with one another created a space for true intimacy, allowing them to work through their challenges together, with greater understanding and compassion. This story illustrates the healing power of vulnerability. When we share our struggles openly, especially with people we trust, we allow others to see us for who we truly are. We give them the chance to respond with love, support, and empathy, and in doing so, we invite deeper emotional bonds to form. While vulnerability is an essential part of personal growth and connection, it must also be protected. Once shared, our vulnerabilities can be misunderstood or misused, especially if we place our trust in the wrong hands. The Buddha teaches us that we must cultivate wisdom in all aspects of our lives, including in how we share our emotional landscape with others. Some people may take advantage of our openness, using our vulnerabilities against us. This can be incredibly painful, especially when it involves someone we care about deeply. The key to protecting ourselves is discernment, understanding who deserves access to our vulnerabilities and who will treat them with the care and respect they deserve. I once confided in a friend about a personal challenge I was facing, only to later find that they had shared my struggles with others, without my permission. The experience left me feeling betrayed and exposed. It took time for me to rebuild trust with that person, but it also taught me a valuable lesson. Not everyone can be trusted with our vulnerability, and it's essential to establish healthy boundaries in our relationships. This experience reinforced the importance of protecting our vulnerabilities. We must choose who we share them with, making sure that the people we trust are those who have consistently shown themselves to be compassionate, responsible, and trustworthy. This is not about shutting others out, but about recognizing that not everyone has the emotional maturity to handle our vulnerabilities with care. In Buddhism, there is a beautiful balance between openness and wisdom. We are encouraged to open our hearts, to share our struggles and our pain, but we are also taught to do so wisely, with discernment and clarity. By sharing our vulnerabilities in this way, we allow ourselves to grow stronger, more resilient, and more compassionate. As I have learned over the years, true vulnerability is not about exposing every part of ourselves indiscriminately. It is about choosing the right people to share with, and understanding that not everyone is ready to receive what we have to offer. I've come to realize that vulnerability is a gift that should be shared with those who are ready to receive it with open arms, without judgment, and with an open heart. In the end, vulnerability is not a weakness, it is a pathway to strength. When shared wisely, it fosters connection, compassion, and understanding. It allows us to show up in the world as our authentic selves, unafraid of judgment or rejection. But to truly benefit from vulnerability, we must exercise discernment, trust ourselves first, and protect our emotional landscape. By doing so, we ensure that our vulnerabilities are honored and respected, and we create space for true healing and growth. The Buddha's teachings on wisdom and compassion remind us that vulnerability is an essential part of the human experience. When approached with awareness and care, it becomes a tool for building deeper, more meaningful relationships and for nurturing our own sense of inner peace and strength. By trusting wisely and sharing mindfully, we open the door to authentic connection, healing, and personal transformation. 8. Good deeds, generosity without recognition. In a world where self-promotion and recognition often take center stage, the idea of doing good deeds without the expectation of acknowledgement or reward can seem radical. Yet, this is exactly what Buddhism teaches. True generosity arises not from seeking applause or validation, but from a place of pure compassion, love, and selflessness. The Buddha's teachings remind us that when we perform good deeds, the true reward lies not in the recognition we receive but in the peace and fulfillment we experience from acting with an open heart. In many ways, generosity without recognition is an act of liberation, liberation from the need for external validation, liberation from ego, and liberation from the endless cycle of seeking validation from the outside world. When we are able to give without expecting anything in return, we step into a space of true freedom, where our actions are guided by compassion rather than the desire for acknowledgement. True generosity is not about giving to receive. It's not about performing acts of kindness with the hope of being praised, recognized, or rewarded. The Buddha taught that generosity, known as dana in Sanskrit, is one of the highest virtues because it is an expression of selfless love and compassion. When we act from a place of true generosity, we give because we care about the well-being of others, not because we expect something in return. Generosity, in this sense, becomes a path to inner peace. The more we give without expectation, the more we free ourselves from the desire for recognition or reward. We realize that the act of giving itself is fulfilling, that it brings us a sense of joy and satisfaction that cannot be measured by external praise. The act of giving becomes its own reward, a reward that nurtures our hearts and minds, connecting us to the essence of our own humanity. I remember a time when a friend of mine was going through a difficult period in their life. They had lost their job, and I knew they were struggling financially. I decided to help by offering them a small sum of money to get through the month. I did not tell anyone about it, and I did not expect anything in return. When my friend thanked me, I simply smiled and reminded them that it was a gift from the heart, not something I sought recognition for. The joy I felt from giving, without the need for applause, was more fulfilling than any external acknowledgement could have been. This experience taught me that the greatest joy from giving comes when we are free from the need for recognition. The satisfaction comes from knowing we've helped someone in need, without any ulterior motives. Generosity, when offered freely, nurtures both the giver and the receiver, creating a bond of love and connection that transcends ego and expectation. Generosity is often associated with material gifts, money, food, or resources, but the Buddha's teachings remind us that true generosity extends far beyond material possessions. Generosity can be found in every action, from offering a kind word, to lending a listening ear, to sharing our time and attention with someone who needs it. Even the simplest act of kindness can be an expression of generosity. There was a time when a colleague at work was feeling overwhelmed with the demands of a project. Instead of focusing solely on my own work, I offered to help them with some of their tasks. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it made a significant difference to them. They were able to complete their work with less stress, and I felt a deep sense of satisfaction in knowing that my small act of generosity had made their burden a little lighter. This story illustrates that generosity is not confined to material wealth. It is an expression of our ability to care for others, to extend ourselves without expecting anything in return. Whether it's offering a smile to a stranger, helping a friend through a tough time, or simply being present for someone in need, these are all forms of generosity that enrich our lives and the lives of others. In a culture that often values external validation, it can be tempting to seek recognition for our good deeds. We might want to share our acts of kindness on social media, tell our friends about the positive changes we've made, or even subtly hint at the good things we've done in the hopes of receiving praise. But the Buddha teaches that attachment to recognition is a form of attachment to ego. When we seek acknowledgement for our generosity, we lose sight of the true purpose of giving. Seeking recognition for our good deeds can cause us to become attached to the outcome of our actions. We may begin to give not out of a pure desire to help others, but out of a need to feed our own egos. This attachment to recognition can create suffering, both for ourselves and for others. It turns the act of giving into a transaction rather than a selfless expression of love and care. I once observed someone in a community group who frequently talked about the donations they had made or the volunteer work they had done. While their acts of kindness were undoubtedly beneficial, their constant need for validation made me uncomfortable. It seemed as though they were giving with the intention of being seen and recognized, rather than giving out of genuine compassion. This situation reminded me of the importance of giving without attachment to the outcome. True generosity comes from a place of humility, not ego. The joy we experience from giving should not depend on whether others notice or acknowledge our actions. When we give freely, without expectation, we create space for our actions to be guided by love, not by the need for validation. The Buddha taught that the most powerful form of generosity is one that is given without expectation. When we give in this way, we experience a deep sense of inner peace, because we are no longer dependent on the opinions or approval of others. Our acts of kindness and generosity become an expression of our authentic selves, not of our desire for external recognition. Over time, I have learned that the most fulfilling acts of generosity are those that go unnoticed by the world. When I offer my help without expecting anything in return, I feel a sense of peace and satisfaction that no external recognition could provide. This peace comes from knowing that I am acting in alignment with my values, not because I seek validation, but because it is the right thing to do. The more I practice generosity without recognition, the more I realize that the true reward lies not in what others see or acknowledge, but in the internal sense of peace and joy that arises from selflessly helping others. Generosity without recognition allows us to align our actions with our inner wisdom and compassion, creating a life of true fulfillment. Generosity is not something that we do only on special occasions, it is a way of being. The more we practice generosity, whether through our time, attention, kindness, or material resources, the more we cultivate a heart that is open and compassionate. As we continue to give without expectation, we learn to detach from the need for recognition, and we become more in tune with the deeper satisfaction that comes from selflessly helping others. In the end, the Buddha's teachings on generosity remind us that true generosity is a form of spiritual practice. It is a way to free ourselves from the distractions of ego and recognition, and to connect with the deepest aspects of our humanity. When we give with an open heart, without seeking anything in return, we create a ripple effect of kindness that extends far beyond ourselves, bringing peace and joy to the world around us. By embracing the practice of generosity without recognition, we allow our actions to reflect our highest values, fostering deeper connections with others and cultivating a life of true peace and fulfillment. Thank you for taking the time to explore these profound teachings with us on Serenity Path. As you continue your journey of personal growth and mindfulness, remember that the wisdom shared today isn't just to be understood, it's to be lived. Whether it's letting go of regret, protecting your inner peace, trusting wisely with your vulnerabilities, or giving generously without expecting recognition, each step brings you closer to true peace and clarity. If you found this video valuable, leave a comment below to share your experience or insights. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on future videos designed to help you cultivate a life of balance, purpose, and serenity. Together, let's walk the path of self-awareness, kindness, and deep inner peace. Keep walking with us, your journey towards a more mindful life starts right here, right now.